Good evening to each of you. Thank you for joining us tonight. I appreciate you with this special edition from the Fellowship Church of Texas. Um, I pray that you all had a great day. Again, if you don't mind, please like, tag, and share this um, video tonight. Um, Good evening to each of you. Hey, Miss Hudson, thank you for joining us. Um, Again, I hope that you've had a great day. Thank you for joining us tonight. I wanted to do something different tonight. Um, One of my friends who's on tonight, Dr. Jewel London, usually when makes a post, she always uses a hashtag of her story and something about some green leaves. I don't know what them leaves are, and I'll ask her about them leaves tonight. And when I saw that, I just kind of had an epiphany of wanting to just gather um, some female preacher pastors who I admire and respect as humans, as women, as colleagues, as preachers, as pastors, just to hear something about their story, their journey, and their perspective from ministry and from preaching. Tonight, I'm honored to have three of the best preachers, three of the most wonderful people in the earth that I know. First, we have, based upon protocol, Pastor Connie Jackson. Pastor Connie Jackson is one of, and I say this not just to say it, she is one of the best preachers I have ever heard. Um, Andrew Berry introduced me to Pastor Connie Jackson 20 years ago when I moved to Houston, and he said, "You have to hear Pastor Connie Jackson." And I said, "Who is that?" He said, I promise you, when you hear, you'll never forget her." And he told the truth. And listen, if you were at Truett this year at the African American Black Preachers Conference, listen, Acts, yeah, yeah, that Acts chapter 3 sermon that she preached. If you've ever preached Acts chapter 3, tear it up, go listen to hers, and maybe you'll come close to what she preached at Truett. So it's a joy to have Pastor Connie on. Next, we have our executive pastor from the Fellowship Church, um, my number two, um, Pastor Anita Greene, who serves as executive pastor at our church, who is doing a wonderful job. I couldn't be where I am without her. I am who I am by the grace of God, and uh, because she has cried, prayed, struggled, pulled her hair out to deal with me in this last year or so, and so I'm grateful for her and for her presence tonight. And lastly, we have one of my dearest friends in the earth who I met years ago, and we've been rocking ever since. Dr. Jewel London, who serves as the pastoral assistant to Dr. Ralph Douglas West. Um, Jewel is a wonderful person, wonderful preacher. Um, we've shared so much concerning ministry. We've shared so much personally, um, the good, the bad, and the ugly. And so she's been a confidant throughout the years. And so I would not dare have this platform and not have her on. So to each of you, thank you for being on, and welcome to the Fellowship Church of Texas online. Thank you. Thank you for being on. Good evening to each of you. Good evening to each of you. Listen, I wanted to open this up by saying this. My professor, Dr. Deborah Martin, said this to us at Proctor. She said that one of the issues with the Black church is that the Black church has a tendency to be more disciples of Paul than of Jesus Christ. And when she said that, I thought about what Paul wrote to Timothy in First Timothy. And it struck me when she said that, and it hit me like a ton of bricks. When Paul said in First Timothy chapter 2, verse number 12, I permit no woman to teach. Not God, not Jesus, but I permit no woman to teach. And I think that has been one of the strongholds, especially in the South. And now, let me say this: every female preacher doesn't have that struggle or that story, but I know several who do. And so I'll give each of you just a few minutes to kind of just give us an overview of your story in ministry. Pastor Connie, we'll start with you.
My story really begins in the womb. My mom, father had 5 children, and my mom, as they would say in the old country, marked each one of us. And my story is she, and my womb environment read scripture to me. She was a preacher's kid, and so she very intentionally did something different with each of us. That really is indicative of who each of us is today. And I've always had a love for the Word of God. That was just something indoctrinated in me as a child. And I knew at 9, I'll cut across the field. I knew at 9 that I wanted to do that. And my mother's sister, who was a preacher pastor, by the way, prophesied over me. But it would be some 25 years later that I would actually say that God has called me to preach. And so I've always been nurtured in the gift of speaking, nurtured in the gift of expounding on the Word of God. Preaching was not in my vocabulary. My parents nurtured the gift and not the title, not the label. By the time I'd gone through politics and all of that kind of thing, and had been in numerous churches speaking, forbidding people, it was a no-brainer for them, but it wasn't a no-brainer for me. I told God, hey, if you're called to do a thing, the evidence is that you can do that thing. Why do you have to tell anybody? Why do you have to announce it to anybody? But God said it's not about announcing what you're doing. It's about announcing what I'm doing. And so I've been clear about that. And that brings us to present day.
Wow. Well, what a blessing you are to those of us who have the joy of hearing you preach. Dr. London?
My journey in ministry began actually. My father was a preacher, pastor, and grew up in the church. And interestingly, I still recount this story. When my parents divorced, they divorced at a young age, and living with my mom exposed my family, particularly my sister and I, to a variety of different denominations: Catholic, Pentecostal. And I recall my sister and I being in church, and in Pentecostal church, sanctified church, as they would call it at the time. And we would mimic those who were speaking in tongues while we were sitting in church, because of course we didn't know any better. But as time grew on, it's amazing how it kind of catch up with you. Because some years later, the Lord would begin to speak to me directly in sensing that calling, and would give, make those gifts manifest within my own individual life. With that being said, that call to ministry was a challenge because when I began to talk to family members about the call, not understanding really what it meant and what it was, I was told that you can be a teacher and you can be a missionary, but women could not be preachers. And so I carried that, but yet I knew God was calling me to a different calling to proclaim the gospel of Jesus Christ. And so it was a long struggle, a long road. And I remember being at church one Sunday, and there was a women's group that came to the church to sing. And actually, it was Tabitha C. Whitten. But she was exhorting before she got ready to sing. And I said, that woman is preaching. And I hadn't heard that before in person, only on television. And so afterwards, had a brief conversation with her, and began to really embrace her ministry. And I learned so much, just being attached and following and serving. And that began to develop and grow. And then God began to lead me into other places. But the journey was very hard. Very difficult, because at every turn it was, the opportunity, the door was not open for me to preach. The door wasn't open for me to learn. The door wasn't open for me to be able to serve at the level and the capacity for which I believe that God was calling me to. And so that began a deep dive search with God directly, and really having this conversation with God and saying that if they won't teach me, then you teach me. And it seems as though at that point, God began to direct me, show me, put people in my path that will help to guide me along that journey. And with that being said, I'm grateful for where I am today, where I can freely serve in just about every area and capacity of ministry. But it was developed in me a desire for every woman who have an opportunity to serve in ministry to be able to do that, and that birthed in me the advocacy for women in ministry. So really just diving deep into that and doing everything I can to help every woman to understand that if God called her, that to create a space for her to be able to do just what God called her to do.
Thank you, Doc. Pastor Greene.
I did not have I did not come from a legacy of pastors. My grandmother was a Pentecostal grandmother who basically reared me. But I can remember as a young girl, my first memory of her saying this to me, prophesying, and she would say it all the time, frequently. Rochelle, that's my middle name, Rochelle is going to heal the sick. And I grew up with that, and she would always say that, even till her death. And I was with her. But one of the things that I realized in 1995, I was just at a point in my life, and I asked the Lord, I said, this is what you've said. This is what I've heard. What does that mean? Because I'm not on the road to becoming a med student. So what are you saying? And he said it so clearly. It was so clear to me when he said, I've called you to heal the sin sick. And that is how my journey began, in terms of really understanding that God had set me apart from even growing up with removing me from my mother's house into my grandmother's house to care for me and to nurture that. And so it was a blessing. I recall as I continued And God continued to speak to me, and he began to remove certain things from my life. And I kept resisting, saying, no, that's not what I want to do. No, you cannot be calling me. I know that's not what. And to your point, Pastor Jordan, thinking about what Paul said, that I wasn't supposed to. I'm a woman. I grew up in traditional teaching that, women are not to be preachers. And although I knew I would, but I knew that it was in me to preach, and I was preaching. And I remember when I first met Pastor Jackson, I was leading a women's ministry at our small church at that time, and I called her to speak at our women's group, and I just hearing someone doing what I felt that God was calling me to do. But it wasn't until I was at a women's conference, and I was with my spiritual mom at the time. And there was a woman who was preaching, and she looked like me, from the hairstyle, the stature, everything. And it was God just saying, I'm telling you. And it was at that point I knew, you really are calling me. And I never will forget. It was as though my spiritual mom, as though she passed her mantle on to me, who also was training me and teaching me how to love women, and to be an advocate for women also, and to believe that he had called me. But I was still faced with, even at the church I was in, they would ask me to speak. They would ask me to, do the welcome, and everything that I did, I had to do it from the floor, the podium on the floor. So it was a blessing to be able to be introduced to an environment where women are acceptable, to be able to meet women like Dr. London, who really did displayed the advocacy of women preachers, and her living a life that I was called to live, to just be available. And just as God opened the doors, just walk through them, because he had put before me a mega door. And I just said, okay, I'm not going to be fearful, because I was fearful initially, because I was so accustomed to preaching from that floor, the podium on the floor. And then I could hear him say, but I'm calling you up. I'm calling you up. And so that's pretty much my journey, and just being discerning.
That's great. Every journey is different. And let me pause to say this before we'll get into the Q&A. Growing up in Alexandria, Louisiana, under my mentors and pastors, etc., this was not permissible. It wasn't acceptable. And so that was ingrained in my DNA as a young preacher pastor, until I moved to Houston. And then God just put me on my own journey to read and to research and to study myself. I'm pausing to say this, because I know there are some pastors who are, as Kurt Carr said, they're stuck between here and there. They may have a desire to support or to be pro, but yet the churches that they pastor are extremely conservative. Bylaws, constitutions, deacons, trustees, boards. And it's difficult, real difficult. It's a fight. It's a difficult fight. the first preacher who preached at my former church was Deborah Bell under me, and Deborah was is a phenomenal preacher. And so to every male pastor who's watching, this is my advice to you when it comes to supporting women in ministry. Go on your own journey and don't allow others to dictate how you think or how you interpret um, the Word of God. Be an individual. Allow God to lead you and to guide you. And so this leads into my first question, and that is, what advice would you all give to a female who is at a church where she will not be able to preach, but she sensed the call. She knows she's called, but she knows the culture of that church, that pastor, but at the same time, that's the only church she knows. She's comfortable. It's her safe place. And she is just timid about, number one, the call. Number two, leaving family, safe place. As Dr. London said, my family says I can't do this. I can speak from the floor, as Pastor Greene said. I can be a missionary, but she knows I'm called to preach. What's your advice to that sister tonight who may be watching?
I pretty much share with her to leave her safe place, her comfort zone, and trust God. Because if God has called her to preach, then He will also provide her a shepherd to watch over her. She has to believe that, and of course, pray. Don't ever move without God until you hear the voice of God leading you to do that. Of course, that goes without saying. But don't be afraid to even have the courage to pray the prayer that God, if you called me to this, then I'm praying, asking Him to, send me, right? Send me, so that the gifts in which He's imparted into her can be utilized and not be stifled because of someone else's fear. That would be my saying, what I would say.
I think it's a faith walk. We can go back to Abraham, where he's finally introduced to this invisible God. They have been worshiping gods of wood and stone and all of this, and God says, "Hey, leave your family, your kindred, everything you know, and go to a place I will show you. Not go to this place, not go to this church, not go to this pastor, but go to a place I will show you." And I think really that's a tough place to be in. And I think you have to have a comfortability with God, not even with yourself, a comfortability with God. Because here's the thing, Pastor Greene, I have no problems preaching from the floor. My mom would tell me, "You're no less preacher on the floor and no more preacher in the pulpit." And so I say, serve where you are, speak where you are. If you're doing announcements, if you are, speaking, what have you, if you're doing Women's Days, type of speeches or messages or what have you, do that. But it really has to be a faith walk to get up and go hear the voice of God that you may not even really be familiar with. All you've heard is, "I have this call. I'm called, now what?" I believe the first call that God gives us is a call to prepare. Not a call to go preach somewhere. It's a call to prepare. So what does this mean? I'm called. So now where is my place of preparation? And I think too many are ready to go out and do something. And I think it really is a matter to go and prepare, to investigate what is my place of preparation. Because here's the truth, you can become large and in charge, and we can ask any of what I call the big girls in ministry, and you still won't be accepted. There still won't be some pulpits you'll get invited to. Come on, let's just tell the whole truth.
Absolutely.
Right. And so if you start off wondering, oh my God, who will accept me? Who will let me come and preach? Who will let me come and be under them? You can go through your whole life. And if you're still not comfortable with the voice of God telling you to go through things that you've never done before, that you've never seen before, trust me, people will not help you become comfortable with that. Even a mentor cannot help you become comfortable with that. So it really is a matter of hearing the voice of God. I believe God calls us first to prepare, and then we move from there. And so I would say, prepare yourself. Prepare yourself. Research what this is. Is it a call to preach? Is it a call to pastor? Is it a call maybe to do Christian education? Because every call, just because that's the most elevated call, everybody's not called to pastor and everybody's not called to preach. So find out first what that call is before you move out. That's it. I'm done.
That's good.
Wonderful.
Mm-hmm.
I echo what they've said. The thing that I saw that was heard that was synonymous between the two is hearing God's voice. And that's very, very key. So I would like to caution us that before we move, that we actually do discern God's voice, and God is directing us. One of the things, and as you've already mentioned, everybody's journey is different, and a call to ministry is a call to preparation. I quickly learned that though I desired to be somewhere different, do somewhere different, be in a place where I could freely function. What I quickly learned, no, let me modify that. It wasn't quick, it was an extended period. What I learned was that I needed discipline. And so the place where I was, God would not release me from where I was. And I needed to be in a place where I would learn to hear and respect authority. Need to be in a place where I would be able to discern God's voice, need to be in a place where I learned how to pray and fast, because all of those tools would be needed where I was going. So was I ready yet to preach and pastor and do all of those things? In my head, I thought maybe I should have been on that track of journey, but God said, no, I need you to learn some fundamental things first, spiritual disciplines first. Before I can entrust you with oversight and feeding my people. And so once I believe God felt like I was at a place where I was ready to make that next step, then I got the release to be able to move and go somewhere else. And all that I learned where I was with that discipline, I have used every last bit of it where I am right now. And so I don't regret that at all. Now, again, it wasn't easy. It was very difficult and challenging, but I needed every last bit of it.
Wow. And that the statement call to preparation is such a broad statement, because discipline, and when you discern the call, and whether you stay where you are or go elsewhere, do you have a disposition to be taught and to be trained? Do you respect authority? Can you be chastised without getting in your feelings and then packing up your bag and leaving? And then do you have the commitment for academic preparation, whether it's in the academy or in your own study? And so there has to be that call to preparation.
Mm-hmm.
And And that's with any preacher, regardless of your male or female. That you have to be trainable, teachable, and it's always some who just aren't, and you like, no, Doc. And as Pastor Jackson said, every preacher isn't called a pastor, and it's okay not to be the pastor. Like, it's really okay not to be the pastor.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it really is. It walk in your lane and do what you've been called to do, because everybody's journey is different. So thank you for that. That was great. Pastor Dr. London made a comment about being an advocate for women in ministry. I want to kind of pivot, but yet ask a question when it comes to advocacy. Dr. J-Lo, how do you feel that men can become an ally or an advocate for women in ministry?
I want to first say, again, thank you for creating the space, because I think it's really important for us to be able to share. And again, everybody has a different journey, a different experience. I'm thankful for all of the amazing women who serve in the designated capacity for which God has called them. I am equally thankful for all of my brothers in ministry who have come alongside this journey as well. I am very aware, and I also respect those who have a different opinion as it relates to whether women can serve or should serve as preachers, pastors, in upper levels of leadership, etc. I respect them and they respect me, and we're good. Um, Advocacy to me is not holding up a sign and saying, standing out in front of churches and picketing and saying, let women in and let them serve and let them be and let them preach. Advocacy is giving voice to equity in ministry as the opportunity presents itself. I've begin to see quickly that when I say advocacy, my encouragement has been to women one-on-one and even in larger platforms. But where I have found the greatest impact are those pastors who will come, male pastors in particular, who will come and say, Jewel, I have this woman in my church who says that she's called to ministry. My congregation will not support that. What can I do for her? Or they'll say they have biases and don't realize that those biases exist. When I say, are women ordained in your church? Well, I don't. We haven't had a woman, to be ordained, or I don't have anyone currently right now. And I said, I just so happened to notice there was a particular lady who was given leadership to this and given leadership to this area in your church. Has she not been ordained? Well, no. Well, she says that she wants to go into education, but I have some other gentlemen. I have some gentlemen who I have, doing pastoral care and serving to me. And I said, but, so just really breaking down and helping them to see the biases. Here's a woman who's given leadership to the largest area of ministry in your church, but you've relegated her off to the side, not realizing you've created an imbalance with those who are doing even less. She's doing the work. She has the education, but yet, and I say, I really think you should take a look at that. But being in spaces where they permit me to be open and sharing with them and being respectful of that space. And it wasn't but a couple of years, I think it was probably 2 years later that woman was actually ordained. Now, whether or not that one seed planted or sown made a difference in her journey, I have no earthly idea. But every opportunity that a pastor would allow me to have a conversation with them and be able to be a voice for that woman, and when they're considering hiring someone, and I'm saying if you hire her and you truly want to be an advocate or support of her, give her the title that goes along with that position. Make sure she has her credentials, license her if she's not licensed, ordain her if she's not ordained. That is how advocacy has worked for me. And how can male pastors be supporters of and advocates for women in ministry? Is that they can use their influence in the area of influence that they have. They can not be ashamed and fall back when they're in the midst of other brothers. And if they believe in women in ministry, then speak to that at appropriate times. And if they have space, give diligent consideration to women who are equally qualified to hold the position, and not always, in other words, you got to do the work. And so don't just automatically go to the male gender, but actually do the intentional work of trying to find a suitable candidate. And if you know that you're trying to shift the culture, do the work. Look for those candidates who have the qualifications to be able to do that. And that is how we begin to make a difference, and we can do it together.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Pastor Greene, what would you say to a sister preacher who wants to quit because of rejection? What would you speak into her tonight?
I would definitely share with her, don't quit, because they rejected Jesus. And to Dr. London's point, a lot of things that we go through and is in ministry is to teach us. She talks about the discipline, and I want to say that my former church, I was there for 20 years, and then prior to that, where the church I was in when I was speaking from the podium, I was there for 6 years. Learning and going through rejection and learning how to overcome those feelings of offense by trusting God through prayer and fasting. I had a routine life of fasting, weekly fasting. And that's what I recommend for any preacher, for any preacher, period. And no matter what her situation is, where rejection is, that is an opportunity for you to grow. That's an opportunity for you to trust God in a situation. That's an opportunity for you to not listen to your own voice, but really listen to the voice of God and trust his voice as to how you came to be there, and really thinking. Sometimes we are, we talk about rejection, and sometimes we're offended only because of our own fears. And I think we have to remove ourselves, so to speak, and just look at how, and really, I know this is a cliche, but really kind of asking myself, what would Jesus do in this situation? I keep thinking about, we still haven't gone through what he's gone through. And if he's called me to a particular place, if he's called me to a particular work, if you will, it's not for me to quit on him. I can't quit on the assignment. I can't quit because I feel offended. So, I feel like that's, again, opportunity for growth. And I would share with her, pray and fast and trust God and and do the work. And because I think that's part of the work. That's part of the work of ministry. We're not going to be liked by everyone. We realize that. Whether or not it's from the pew or from the pulpit, everyone is not going to like us. And I think that the other piece I would share with her is, don't compare yourself. Don't compare yourself with other preachers that other female preachers who like the great preachers. Sometimes we want to. I mean, I served alongside of Dr. London, and the one thing that I had to ensure is I didn't compare myself to or with Dr. London and her travel and her journey, because I was on my own journey. And that's what I think. That's what women. I think that's what I would say to another preacher, to be obedient to your journey, regardless as to what people might say. Sometimes the devil just allows you to hear conversations just so that to discourage you. So don't be distracted. Don't be distracted.
Pastor Jackson, as a senior pastor, what advice would you give to a female pastor who is trying to navigate the waters of the pastorate?
Well, I'm going to keep going back to the voice of God. There really is no cookie cutter template for pastoring.
Absolutely.
And I think that's how many are distracted, discouraged, because they see a model and then they tell God, I want to do that. I want to have this kind of church. I want to have this kind of ministry. And it's about trusting God to know what is best. Not being super spiritual here, but that really is it. You'll find yourself chasing your tail, so to speak. If you are trying to look on YouTube or on Facebook and see how people are doing their social media, or how many people they have, or what programming they're doing, if you're really going to be true to the call of God, you still have to hear the voice of the Spirit saying to you, this is the way. Don't turn to the left or to the right. And so navigating the waters of pastoring is like navigating the waters in corporate America. I think we too tightly define. We're trying to put ministry in a box. As Dr. London and Pastor Greene were talking, rejection is a part of life, right? So what if everybody doesn't support you? So what if you don't have a full church? And he gave some to be pastors, and he gave some to be teachers. And so I really think we have to understand what God has called us to be. You may be a pastor that deals with the community only. That may be your parish. And so the fact that you don't meet in a church with walls, you have what Dr. London has, a church without walls. And God puts you whereby you go from one community project to another. You really have to know what you're called to be. And this senior pastor stuff, I tell people all the time, I call myself Pastor Jordan, a pastor teacher. Because here's the truth, at my church, I'm the only pastor. So until I have a junior pastor and some associate pastors, senior pastor, that's another label that throws people off, that they want to embody a title, but that's not really their situation. So when God calls you to pastor, and the two here will laugh at this. I told God I would do anything but pastor. We had an agreement. We were going well until 2017. I told God I'd do brain surgery, urology even. I'd do anything but pastor. And because I knew what it was like. I'd done enough church consultation. I consulted with enough pastors, helping them manifest, their visions and their dreams and all of that. And I knew the grueling work that it requires, both mentally, physically, and spiritually. And I would say make sure that that's what God has called you to do. And it will probably be, at the very onset, a very lonely journey. So don't have any preconceptions about what God is going. Oh my God, I'm going to blow up. Or all I have to do is this. All I have to get is lights and some good cameras and all that. You can have all of that. And God will still say, unless you're willing to do do it how I've called you to do it, do it in the venue that I've called you to do it, you still will not be successful.
Absolutely. Dr. Gardner Calvin Taylor was bothered by this new preacher. Um, and he said that pain and preaching are synonymous,
Mm.
and that your ministry will never be blessed because of your vocabulary or how you dress. Will never be blessed because of your academic status. He said your ministry and your preaching will only be blessed after you travel through your own Gethsemane
That's it.
and you traveled up your own Calvary.
Mm-hmm.
And so to every preacher, female preacher to male preacher, if you don't want to have to endure suffering and rejection and however your suffering will come wrapped, then this is not for you. Because every preacher, as Pastor Jackson said, won't be, a mega pastor, or every preacher won't be a Gina Stewart or a Ralph West or Marcus Cosby or Jasmine Skrla. You do what you're called to do, and allow God to navigate the course of your journey, from call to preparation. And allow
Pastor
God to do that.
Jordan, can I interject something really quickly?
Please.
I know the tenor and tone in which we're talking about women in ministry. But can I say this just very quickly?
Absolutely.
The struggle, the persecution for any sister who is listening to me, the hardship and what have you, just may not be because you're female. Please get past that, because the brothers may not talk about how hard it is and how big of a struggle it is, right? And how they may be having financial trouble and how nobody is supporting them. So please don't automatically think that the reason why people aren't coming and the reason why you can't get anybody to come is because you're female.
Absolutely.
Ministry itself
is difficult.
Jesus said, in this life,
absolutely,
you shall have trials and tribulations, but be of good cheer. Come on now. You're not going through anybody. So if I can set anybody free tonight, like Dr. J. Lo would say, if I can set anybody free tonight, don't think automatically that the reason why your ministry is starting off small, seemingly, just not getting, the support, just may not be because you're female. It just may be because that's the nature of ministry.
That's the nature of ministry. And you're right. It's almost like a pastor you'll meet, and he'll tell you that life is great, but he won't tell you that he just had a hell of a deacons meeting yesterday. He won't tell you that church meeting last month, it was real rough, but ministry, and especially in this season, I don't want to keep you all night, but I want to thank you all for coming on. Fellowship is, of course, a friend to every female preacher who is called of God. Of course, our executive pastor is doing a wonderful job, and we have several. How many preachers do we have, Greene?
A total of I think 7.
Yeah, okay.
7. Mm-hmm.
7 female preachers or 7
total. Female
Okay.
preachers we have,
Yeah, 5.
including myself, 4,
Okay.
2, 4, 6. No, I'm sorry. 2, 4, 6.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, at least 6, right?
Yeah. What a blessing. What a
Mhm.
blessing. Yeah.
So we have 8 preachers. Mhm.
It's a rough crowd, but we're doing the best we can with them. Yeah. It's a monthly crew, Doc. Yeah. But thank you all. Thank you all for coming on. I appreciate you. I wanted to do this tonight, again, for several reasons. Because I love and respect each of you. But I also wanted to encourage the sister who may be between here and there. Maybe this may push her to acknowledge her call. Maybe the sister who's heard the voice of God, this may call her to prepare, or this may call her to leave her safe place and go where she can use her gift, whatever that looks like. I don't know what it looks like. I just know God put it on my heart and I wanted to do it. So, however, God will use this tonight, that's His business. But tonight, I'll say this in signing off. Sis, if you've been called to preach, uh, prepare yourself, uh, acknowledge it, seek God's face. Uh, Again, don't compare yourself, as they said. Uh, Allow God to chart your journey, chart your journey, your course. Prepare yourself. Um, Read um, everything you can get your hands on to. Um, Take a class here and there. Um, find a pastor and a mentor that will pour into you, who will nurture you, who will pray for you, who will push you. Um, Read and read some more, and study and study some more, and read and study some more, and watch good preaching, read good preaching, read everything, but don't just limit your reading to preaching and theology. Read everything you can get your hands on. Give God something to work with, you know.
Mr.
So,
Jordan, can I add to that?
hey, Jeff, of course you can.
I would also like to stress the importance of spiritual formation, your own individual spiritual disciplines. Um, Everything that Pastor Jordan said is important, but your prayer life, your relationship with God, the time that you being able to hear and discern God's voice, not just speaking to God, but allowing God to speak to you. Learning how to fast and pray and doing Lectio Divino and just really spending that quality time developing your own personal relationship with God, because when you stand before God's people, you need to be confident in ensuring that you are saying what God has deposited on the inside of you and not just what you read from a book or the internet.
Amen.
Now, listen, y'all. Jules said that because she think I'm a heathen and I don't fast and pray. So she just wanted to tell y'all that because she said he not gonna say fast and pray. So I'm gonna say it for him because he don't fast and pray. So I'm gonna say it for him because she think I'm a heathen. So, but thank you, friend, Pastor Connie. Thank you so much for being who you are, for being an example of a great pastor and a wonderful preacher. Again, that sermon Acts 3 from Truett, I will never forget. Again, Dr. Walker and I from the Loop were together last night, and we discussed your sermon last night. So again, thank you for being an example of a great preacher. Jewel, thank you for being who you are to me as a friend. Um, you've been my sounding board of many days, and I appreciate you. I bless God to see where God has taken you from when I first met you, and how God has just opened doors for you. And me and God and Pastor West, we tried to raise you right. And we did the best we could.
Bless you. Dominus, we still covering Nikki. We still.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, do that because she has to have one more surgery in the near future. Uh, yeah, so that took the breath out of us a little, but God is faithful. Pastor Greene, thank you for who you are to who you are to me and and to fellowship. Thank you for answering the call and from leaving your safe place and hearing God's voice, um, and for doing what only you could do for fellowship and for me. God sees, God knows, and always know that I am appreciative of everything you've done for the church and for me. And no matter what the naysayers may say, you are doing a hell of a job, and I appreciate everything you do for me and for the church. And the best is yet to come.
Thank you.
So blessings upon each of you and your ministry. I pray that God will add years and great success to your lives, to your ministries, to your families, and to your churches. Um, all right. Thank you all for tuning in. Fellowship, thank you all for sharing and tuning in. And thank you all for allowing me to have a few days off. One of those days didn't go as I had planned it to go. And so I'm going to take a few more days off of rest and relaxation and self reflection. And so, whatever you need between here and Sunday, please contact Pastor Greene or our Chief Operating Officer, Sister Nugent. My cell phone will be off, and I'll see you all Sunday night, well, Friday night, for the virtual roast and toast for the pastor. And don't forget, it's the pastor's first annual Founders Day. My pastor, Dr. Timothy Sloan, will be the guest preacher at 8 a.m. on Sunday morning. So, again, this is a kind of rest, relaxation, reflection. One thing I've discovered in this uh, uh, season of rest and relaxation for the last few days, and I'm awfully transparent. I've disappointed God in a few areas of my life, and it was hard to admit. But at the same time, it was necessary for growth, development, and everything that God does is well. And so, thank you, fellowship, for allowing me to be your pastor. Thank you for allowing me to have this time to rest my mind. Again, I've gone through planning a church, putting my mom in a dementia facility, Nikki's colon cancer, um, and it's been a tumultuous year for me. So I needed this time, and so thank you for not, respecting my wishes and giving me this time. And so I love each of you. Again, I appreciate you, and I want each of you to have a great night. And we're gonna do this again, and real soon. And Deborah Bell, if you on here, we're gonna have you on here next time. Yeah, we're gonna have you on here next time. You, as a matter of fact, Greene, the next time we do this, I want Deborah Bell and Dr. Candace Brock. Is it Candace or Candace? I don't want to get a name. Dr. Brock from San Antonio. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's gonna be our next two guests. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's gonna be the next two guests, and we'll have one more. One more. Matter of fact, Crystal Berry as well. We're gonna add Crystal to that. That's gonna be the next three for the her story part two. See how the Holy Ghost works. Mighty God. All right. Y'all have a good night. Peace.
All right. You too. Bye, ladies.